Happy Friday, everyone. Hello and welcome to Intentional Conversations VodCast. As we normally do, we like to give it just a few moments for our participants to get settled into this Zoom community. We have been expecting you, and we don't take it lightly that many of you decide to spend this hour with us every Friday. For those who this is your first time, welcome. I am Dr. Nika White. I serve as the founder and lead principal consultant for NWC. And I am being supported today by a number of amazing colleagues at NWC and really appreciate all of the support that they bring to the Intentional Conversations VodCast community. This is our way of showing up for the larger community. We do this every Friday, no cost at all. It's a way for us to intersect conversations of diversity, equity, and inclusion with leadership in business, and to bring on guest co-hosts who are doing amazing things within their own respective areas and disciplines. And so today will be no different. I can't wait to introduce our guest co-host today. But as you are joining this community, I'll ask that you find the chat. Please feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat. Let us know where you're joining the conversation from. It's always a pleasure for us to see where people are joining the conversation from. And so let us know that. And also, if you feel inclined, cameras are not required, but we love smiling faces. And so please consider turning those cameras on. But if you're just participating in an auditory capacity, we welcome that as well. I do want to let you know that we have closed caption that has been enabled for those of you who may need it as part of this community. We like to practice disability justice, so that's our way of making sure that everyone can be a part of today's conversation. Also, if you'd like, share your LinkedIn information into the chat. This helps us to connect with each other even outside of this window of time, and so we always value that. Now, as I normally do, I like to go through a couple slides just to give you a little bit of information about what you can look forward to and what's going on. So first and foremost, we have an amazing lineup of great co-hosts. I think we're already booked through April, but we're still continuing to get recommendations and to secure other speakers. And so if you know of someone in your network, or maybe that's you, and you would love to be a co-host on Intentional Conversations, then let us know. Simply send your recommendations to Courtney@nikawhite.com. Courtney is joining us today, so she loves getting those recommendations. It's how in which we've been able to secure a number of hosts. And so thank you in advance. One of the things that we also do to show up for our community by way of helping them to deepen their learning around diversity, equity, and inclusion is we produce a lot of content, courtesy content. And every week we release a new video called Inclusion Uncomplicated, Simplify DEI. And you can catch all of the past replays by simply just going to our YouTube channel or accessing it through our website, nikawhite.com. We hope that you will find that of value to you. Now, I want to give you a heads up as to what you can anticipate for the weeks in advance. So for the next Intentional Conversations, which is scheduled for February 4th. That's going to be our first IC in the month of February, which, by the way, happens to be NWC's 5th year anniversary. Yay, we're excited about that. But we are going to be welcoming Michiel Oevenwald, and he is going to be joining us for Intentional Conversations, sharing information about bias in AI and how to deal with fairness in AI and other emerging technologies. And so Michiel is actually a pretty consistent participant in the IC VodCast, and so we're enjoying having him in the seat of host next week. And then the following Friday on the 11th, I'm so excited we get to welcome John Graham. If you don't know John Graham, look him up. You are going to be in for a treat. And for that conversation, we're going to be discussing making decisions through the lens of a healthy Black psychology rather than white psychology. And so he is the author of a book that I know many of you are going to probably want to put into your library. So I can't wait to share that space and time with John Graham. So be sure to join us on February the 11th. And today, our guest co-host is Robyn Grable. And I want to, as I normally do, for those of you who are repeat visitors to our VodCast, I want to give Robyn an official formal introduction, and then we will welcome her to the stage, if you will, the virtual stage, and she will greet you in her own way and share some additional information. Robyn Grable is the founder and CEO of Veterans Ascend and Ability Ascend, which she created to help employers invest in a talent acquisition strategy that that is an intentional model of inclusivity for military talent and talented people with disabilities. Her unwavering commitment to inclusive employment is well served by her corporate and military experience, including more than 30 years of private sector human resources after 9 years of service in the U.S. Navy. Her ongoing study of America's workforce have made her a leading voice on advocacy, removing barriers and providing connections to successful employment for our underserved talent pools. In the private sector, she focused primarily on workforce management, human capital planning, recruitment, process and procedure evaluation, strategic alignment, and relationship management. She created skills assessment programs at blue chip companies, McDonald's Corporation and McGraw-Hill. And during her tenure as strategic client partner at ADP, a leading human capital management firm, Robyn successfully managed and grew the largest client portfolio of Fortune 100 companies. Today, Robyn is focused entirely on ensuring veterans, military spouses, and people who happen to have disability are recognized for their skills and valued for their talent, that America employers realize the full value of great talent in the workforce to truly ascend. I love that name, by the way, Ascend. And so help me in your own way to please welcome our guest co-host today, Robyn Grable, with whatever way that feels appropriate to you, VodCast community. You can place some claps, of course, into the chat or some words of affirmation or welcome, whatever you need to do. Let's make sure we allow Robyn to feel that we are so appreciative of her saying yes to our invitation. And we just admire the work that you're doing. So Robyn, in your own way, I want you to greet this audience and maybe even share something that we would not know about you by reading your bio. That helps us to get even a deeper connection to you as our guest host for today. Welcome.
Well, thank you very much, Nika. I am so delighted to be here. I just appreciate the opportunity to be on with your audience. Thank you all for being here on this Friday, spending this hour with us to have this intentional conversation. It's near and dear to my heart, obviously, in my work, but it has been really my life's work since I was a stepchild. So that's how far back it goes. So being a stepchild, wanting to be a child psychologist because I wanted to help people, then going in the Navy as a female in the late 70s, early 80s, a very difficult time, really a lot of stress around being a female in the military, limited jobs that I could do. I became an advocate for women very quickly and people that needed that little voice for them. So I am just honored to do the work that we do. It's been a blessing. Really, I think I was born to do this. So I'm just honored to be here to talk about what we're doing. So a little known, probably not a fact about me, but I always like to share this. It gives you a little insight into my passion about things. I line up my M&Ms by color in order to eat them. So it's a little bit of a crazy note, but so and I also fit into each one of the categories of people that we're helping. I do have disabilities of my own, hidden ones. So there's a lot of population out there, and we'll get to talk about this, but a lot of population out there, you don't see the disability, but they're dealing with it. So it's always good for me to help people be mindful and be kind. So that's me.
Mindful and kindness. I love that. Well, thank you for sharing a little bit more about yourself, Robyn. And we're definitely going to talk today about those hidden disabilities. So many of us have them. And I think sometimes when we consider just the broad spectrum of diversity, of difference, we don't necessarily gravitate towards things that we can't see. And so we will certainly get into that. But so I loved your fun fact about how in which you eat your M&Ms. I do the same for my Skittles, because I find that if you just eat a handful and they're all mixed, you don't really get the flavor that you're after. You have to so anyway, sidebar, but nonetheless, thank you for sharing. So I want to talk about your Navy experience. I think I want to start there. And first, thank you so much for your service to our country. I'm sure that was not easy. And so I want to give this audience the benefit of having maybe a little bit of a day in the life of Robyn during your military years. Help us to understand how that helped even shape your leadership and the work that you do right now.
Absolutely. Well, just a plug, there's a book out there called Strength and Gratitude, 13 Stories of Veteran Entrepreneurs. You can read a lot more about my journey from the Navy to entrepreneurship in that book. It's available on Amazon. But when I went in the Navy, I lived in a little town in Indiana. Didn't have a lot of choices from the family perspective, but financially to be able to go to college. The recruiter came to high school one day and said, join the Navy and see the world. I was like, wow, I've never been on an airplane. I'm going to join the Navy. My first experience on an airplane was horrible. So getting to boot camp and going through that. But I quickly learned in boot camp that I excelled there. It was a challenge. I loved the opportunities, and I loved just being part of something bigger than me, and something where I was supported by being me, right? And being part of that organization. So it really was where I belonged. And then I had the honor to, right after I graduated from boot camp, I was chosen to be an assistant company commander. That's what they called kind of the drill sergeants in the Navy. They didn't have enough females back then. So they chose 5 of us out of the graduating class to then become company commanders. So I went instantly from being trained to being the trainer. And I will never forget one in particular situation. A lady was struggling to get through her physical test. And I just said, please just do what they ask you to do. That's all you have to do. Think about it that way. Don't think, just do what they're asking you to do. And it was there that really started my journey of advocacy. I learned quickly that I could help people get through something. My first duty station outside of that was Iceland. I didn't even know where Iceland was at the time. So much for my Indiana education. I didn't even know where it was. And I was like, okay. It was a 9-hour flight from Orlando to Keflavik, Iceland on a C-130. Anybody knows anything about military planes? It was not a pleasant experience. It was cold. There were no seats on the plane. It's a cargo plane. So it was a different experience. And I was 18 years old. I'd never been out of Indiana, never been on a plane. This was an experience. But what I experienced there was 2 types of individuals. The older generation men who wanted to take me under their wing and say, oh, you're my granddaughter, you're my daughter, I can't let you do any of these hard things. Let me do it for you. Or the younger generation who thought women only went in the military for one promiscuous reason. I wanted nothing to do with either one of those situations. So again, quickly became a situation where I had to fight. I had to fight for my voice. I also had to fight to do an occupation that all the men could do, but I was not allowed to do simply because I was a female. No other reason. Not because I wasn't smart enough, not because I wasn't strong enough, not because I couldn't do the job, simply because I was a female. So again, that really built the foundation for what I've been through. The rest of my Navy experience had ups and downs, but I will tell you, I absolutely loved wearing the uniform. I was so probably control freak about it. Everywhere I went, everybody was, you're wearing the uniform wrong, you need to wear it correctly. So I loved wearing the uniform. I loved being part of that community, part of that environment. Again, much bigger than me, being able to serve our country. So that's really, it had its ups and downs, but it really built the foundation for what I get to do today.
No, that's awesome. Thank you for being a trailblazer, Robyn. Thank you for helping to pave the way for so many other women that came behind you. And I really hope that, you know, things are continuing to change and evolve for women that are a part of military branches. And I'm sure that a lot of the work that you put in is a part of that. So thank you. And we did place into the chat the book that you referenced before. And so I do hope each of you will check that out. So what does it mean, Robyn, for employers to hire differently? And why is that important?
You know, it means that you have to look at the talent you need for your organization, not just try to fill a position or put a body in a position. You really have to think differently. Who fits into the skill set you need? Who fits into the culture of the organization? You know, when you go into the military, you take an ASVAB test and you figure out what you're good at, what your skills are. And then they place you in occupations that match those skills and match where they need you to be. Employers don't do enough of that. They are simply reacting. So I believe that employers will really truly get an ROI when they think differently about who they hire. The military as well is so diverse. When you look left and right, you don't see gender, you don't see ethnicity, you don't see age. You see the person who can do the job, has your back. More employers need to think like that and have that mentality. You're on my team, let's get the job done. So I think that employers really, if they thought differently, and it goes back to the CEOs that started out of creating a business, the person that they picked as the second hire in that business, there was some thought to that, right? They thought differently about who they were going to bring on. As they grow, they lose that thought process. And it's more about being reactive. I just have to get this position filled. We need to go back to the times of really thinking about who you need in your organization.
Yeah, the right people in the right seats.
Exactly.
So let's talk a little bit about ways employers can better evaluate for skills and not just on experience, because I know that you talk about that as well.
Absolutely. So for me, it really comes down to, job descriptions are written on tasks list that need, the tasks that need to get done for a job, rather than the skills required of the job. Mm-hmm. If an employer would sit down and say, this manufacturing job that I need to do requires these skills, attention to detail, doesn't matter what the task is. They need attention to detail. They need strategic thinking to make sure that there's safety, compliance, all those things. What skills do they need? But they write job descriptions based on the tasks they need done. And therefore, they can't be in a mindset to think about the skills when they're looking at a resume or looking at a candidate's profile. They're not thinking that way. They're thinking, I need this task done. Have you done that task before? Great, then you can do it here. Totally a misperception, because just because I did the task at another employer doesn't make me good at it. Doesn't mean I have the skills to do it. How do you know how I performed in that job? Think about the skills rather than the tasks. So it's about helping them look at a job differently and saying, what skills do I need? Not what tasks do I need done? What skills do I need to fit into this team? Do I need somebody that's client facing, can be out in front of our clients? Do I need someone who can, have that that personality, that type of thing? So it's changes the whole dynamic of how you write the job profile versus the job description.
It does. It is a shift in paradigm. But I love the reframing, because I think that you're right. Sometimes, especially when employers find themselves needing to fill positions, there's an urgency about it, right? Because someone is having to catch, that load, right? And fill in the gaps. And so with that sense of urgency, we do tend to focus on, to your point, less on the skills, but just more on, have they done it before? Have they done it before? So I appreciate that. So Robyn, from your vantage point, why do you believe that military and veterans are discriminated against in hiring?
I think I'll use the word intentional. I don't necessarily believe that it's intentional discrimination. I believe that it's a process of time, right? And education and understanding. Less than 1% wear the uniform, have anything to do with the military, right? So it's an education process. I don't understand what you did in the military. I don't know how I can fit you into my organization. I'm a small business. You ran a $34 million project in the military. My company's not even worth $34 million. What would I do with you? You would get bored here. They make assumptions about military. What's happened, though, in the use of applicant tracking systems is they're filtering out military talent, because the applicant tracking systems are looking for your previous employer to line up, right, in the industry. They're looking for your previous title to line up with the title of the job that you're looking for. And they're looking for your education. So now a lot of that is changing. I've seen a lot of reports now that employers are deciding they don't need a 4-year degree, because they used that as a filter years ago. They had thousands of applicants. They had to get a way through them. So I think that it's not necessarily discrimination other than a misunderstanding, lack of education, lack of really giving their HR talent acquisition teams the tools and the time to bring in the right talent, not just military. I think it's, it's anybody that's the right fit for the company, the right fit for the skills. They need the time to be able to do that. But 95% of veterans, military spouses get filtered out when they apply blindly for jobs online. So employers are missing out on even getting to that conversation. And then when they do get their resume through the applicant tracking systems, again, lack of knowledge, lack of understanding what military terms mean, what military experience means. They're setting that resume aside because I have to recommend you to move forward in the company. If you don't work out, it's on me, right, as an HR professional. So they don't want to take that risk a lot of times. So they're going to put it aside. Not really, again, in a discriminatory way, just a lack of understanding, a lack of knowledge, and lack of time to learn.
Yeah, and even though it may not be intentional, there's impact there that is harmful to that community and that population of citizens that are very deserving of being the consideration set for gainful employment across all these multitude of opportunities. And so thank you for highlighting this information.
And it's harmful to the organizations too, Nika, right?
Yeah.
Because they're missing out on great talent.
Right. No, absolutely. And along those lines, we're hearing a lot about the Great Resignation right now, right? We're hearing so much about it to where employers are feeling challenged and they really are grappling with what do we need to do differently to make sure we can retain the talent we have and can attract the talent that we want. And so I think that part of today's conversation is really amplifying that this could be one of the solutions. Let's think about these untapped workforce and populations of people that are not always top of mind in the consideration set. So are you seeing with the Great Resignation a shift around people's perceptions of, again, those with disabilities or, veterans, military spouses? What are you seeing, Robyn?
Absolutely. So I read an article recently that really talked about it's not necessarily a great resignation. It's about people having more choices and making choices for their life, right? Not just being stuck in a job that pays less than minimum wage or just pays minimum wage, because there are opportunities out there with employers who really value their employees. So I think it's more about, having those choices. But I think employers are really looking at, again, where they're finding the talent and being more intentional about the talent that they bring in, looking at their process, looking at their tools that they're using, looking at where they're getting the candidates from. Right. Companies tell me all the time, we get lots of applicants. Great. But how long does it take you to turn an applicant into a candidate? Mm-hmm. There's time factor there, right? There's a lot of things that you don't know about that applicant that you need to know for your company. So how are you bridging that gap between an applicant and turning them into a true candidate? And of course, that's what we do at Veterans Ascend. But it's about really thinking, again, really almost going back to the basics of who do I need to work in my company? What skills do they need? Where do I find those skills? It's not about, hey, I want somebody that's worked at a previous payroll company. I worked for ADP for 15 years. I can't run payroll. So, there's assumptions that they make, right? So it's about looking at your organization and saying, what skills do I need for this job, for the team, for the company overall? Where do I find those skills? And instead of saying, all right, we're going to hang the job out on the job board and we're going to get a bunch of applicants because we're the best company to work for. We're all friendly to every segment of the population. Everybody wants to work here. But then beyond that, they don't create an experience that is inclusive and intentional. So.
There you go. Inclusive and intentional. Those words definitely belong together. So let's talk about your software platform, Robyn, Veterans Ascend. Technology certainly is providing a great pathway of helping us to be more efficient and effective with our processes. And so talk about your software and how it can be leveraged to find the right skills match in an inclusive and equitable way.
Absolutely. Well, the first difference in our program is we do not use a resume. We do not have candidates have to fill out a resume. We translate occupations into a skills profile for our candidates based on what they did in the military, based on what they've done as a civilian, traits that they may have if they don't have any occupational experience. Sometimes spouses or people with disabilities don't have that history. But we don't show the employer anything about experience other than skills. Here are the skills this candidate has. And so it's almost a match, you know.
Oh, I think we lost volume. Robyn, if you can hear us, we lost volume.
For jobs. They get matched automatically to employers who use our program. And our employers are 100% intentional, 100% inclusive, because we do not scrape jobs off the internet. We do not scrape jobs off of an employer's job board. They have to go in and create a job profile, be very mindful of the skills they need for the job, set the location and the salary range, and then our algorithm matches them with candidates in our database. And our team activates and goes to work behind the scenes, sourcing the right candidates for their organization. So it's about really breaking all the barriers and the bias and helping employers have an investment in a talent strategy, again, that's inclusive and intentional, without having all the noise, without the misunderstanding of where you worked before or gaps in your work history. Military spouses suffer this tremendously because they're moved around a lot. So they have gaps in their work history or lack of career progression because they stay at home for a year, then they go back to work in the same job they had before. So it's about breaking all those barriers. We also do not show employers any identifying information until they've unlocked their contact information. At that point, they've already their mindset is already set on this is the right candidate for me because they have the skills, they're located where I need them to be, and their salary requirement lines up with our salary range. At that point, they've made an investment. They're paying to unlock the contact information of this candidate. Now,
it appears we lost sound again. I'm not sure if it's me or if you all are experiencing the same, but I'm thinking that Robyn may be experiencing some difficulties, maybe with stability of the internet.
Interview with this candidate. It also sets employers up for onboarding and retention success because they're already going into the conversation knowing this is a veteran, knowing this is a military spouse, knowing this is someone with a disability. So they're prepared to have that conversation ahead of time, and because they're intentional about it. So now the onboarding experience is so much better. The retention process is so much better for the employer and the candidates. It's just an all-around win-win. So we're pretty proud of it.
You should be proud. And so, Robyn, I want to take a quick moment just to let you know that we are experiencing a little bit of technical difficulties, and we believe that it may be your end. You're freezing up on us. And then there have been a couple moments where maybe for about, 3 to 5 seconds, we will lose audio from you. So if you see me put my hand up, that's just alerting you, because what I'm noticing is that it will correct itself after a few seconds, and maybe that'll help us be able to get through. You're sharing such amazing information. I want this community to gain the value of understanding all about your software, your platforms, your strategies. And so I wanted to make you aware of that. So you talked about matching candidates to a job versus matching the job to the candidate. And again, the paradigm shift and the reframing that you're providing today, I think, is so significant. How does this improve the rest of the recruitment process? And how does it improve hiring and retention? And how important is that for the current economy? Help us to understand the full circle of why this is so critical.
Absolutely. Great question. So when I apply for a job, I'm trying to fit myself into the job, right? And I may not necessarily have the skills or the qualifications for the job, but it's something I want to do, or it's something that I've done before. I'm trying to fit myself into the organization. When we match candidates to a job based on their skills, they're already identified as being confident and competent in those skills. They've had the experience in those skills. So they're matched to an opportunity that values those skills versus them trying to fit themselves into the job and the employer trying to say, well, you might be a good fit. I think you have the skills we need. We'll try it out, which doesn't work. So if you're matched to an opportunity, if you think about, again, eHarmony, Match.com, right? If you don't get matched to the right person, if you try to fit yourself into somebody's profile that says they want a blonde, athletic person, and that is not you, it's not going to work, right? But if you're matched on the skills and techniques and all those things that you have based on your experience, then it's going to be a better match. What happens for the employers then is they're bringing in a candidate, first of all, who feels valued because you've matched to me and you've chosen me to be part of your organization because of my skills, because of my military experience, or because I have a disability that I can help you as an organization with. Now they feel valued. They're already integrated again in that mindset of this is a veteran, because I can tell you I applied for many jobs that I did not designate I am a veteran, simply because of some misunderstandings about females in the military, right? So again, the employers get that person who feels valued, is confident in their skills, is ready to hit the ground running to do the job. And so the retention of that person is just, it's exponential, because not only do they get into a job that values their skills, but they're getting into a company that values them as a person, regardless of their ethnicity, their age, their gender, etc. So.
And Robyn, while we're talking about this in the context of military spouses, veterans, people with disabilities, what's interesting is that I didn't necessarily label it or define it the way that you're talking about it today. But recently, my company, we went through a hiring process. And in those discovery conversations, I was clear to say that we're looking to satisfy several different needs we have by way of function and skills. But I can't produce to you in this discovery conversation a job description per se. And the reason why is because I want to understand, what are your superpowers? What are your skill sets? What really allows you to be able to create at a high level where you can contribute to organizations. And although it felt very unconventional and even a little uncomfortable, because I was so used to the standard way, have a job description, talk about all those bullets, the approach was so refreshing. And I really do believe that led us to have greater insight into how we could best onboard and leverage the talents and the skill sets of that individual that we were able to hire. And so, while there's some people in here that are listening to this information and they're also thinking about how can we create greater opportunities from a job perspective for military spouses, veterans, and people with disabilities, I think that just this common practice is something that really can transcend across so many different organizations. And so I just wanted to share that. Now,
and the fact is, that it's not expensive, right? And they can invest a little bit of time and get the right tools for their talent acquisition teams, for their HR teams, but the ROI it doesn't cost a lot for employers to get back to basics and get back to having these type of conversations.
Yes, no, I love it. We're having some good comments that are being shared in the chat. Keep that going. I want you all to see the chat as a way to extend a sense of community here. And we are going to shift momentarily to inviting any of you who are willing to unmute yourself and present your question or your contributions to the conversation to do so. But if you are one of those individuals that would like your question presented on your behalf, you can send those directly to us, and we will share those without necessarily having you to be live or share directly. So what we're really talking about is the importance of a talent strategy, right? We need a talent strategy. So just lean into that a little bit and share more about why do you think some organizations do not invest the time and energy in really developing a strategy and they just start executing, and what are the implications of that?
Absolutely. So again, a great question. I think that, again, it goes back to basics. You know, when you're the CEO of a Fortune 50 company, your bottom line is, you know, revenue, shareholder investments. And, but I always go back to saying, you don't have shareholders or customers without employees.
Right.
So, I mean, you just can't build a business or run a business or grow a business without employees. And so why are they not treated as your biggest asset, investing in bringing on the right talent, investing in their training, investing in their retention? I think what happens is the bigger a company gets, the farther away from that process they get. Not a lot of CEOs are doing interviews. You know, not a lot of CEOs are doing that process. And there's a lot put on the HR teams today and a lot put on talent acquisitions. COVID added even more to what HR professionals have on their plates. So I think that the employers need to get back to the basics and really saying employees are our assets. How can we treat them better? How can we bring on the right talent? How can we show them that we are invested in their professional development, in their growth? Whether that's, you know, from a family perspective, you know, especially now with COVID and the flexibility and all of these things have changed the dynamic of employees. And again, it doesn't cost that much, but if you don't do it, you're going to continue to suffer the Great Resignation. People are going to go where they're feeling valued, where they feel a purpose, where they can get paid for their value. And so I think employers are recognizing that, but throwing money at it is not the only answer, right? Just throwing a sign-on bonus is not the only answer. It's again, a very intentional strategy, but it has to permeate from an interviewing and sourcing all the way through to retirement of that employee. And I think because there are gaps in there, because sometimes the work is a little more hard to do that, they just say, hey, we have a production line. We've got to run this 24/7. We need bodies in there. And what they're not understanding is if they don't get the right talent in there, they're going to end up with turnover. They're going to end up with bad product. They're going to end up with clients leaving, not getting new clients. It's all connected, but the common denominator is that employee. Yeah. It all comes back to that employee, right? And how you brought them on board, what their experience was the first day they started. This is really important for military people because we're used to next duty station, we're on the clock, right? We are in there getting the job done. The worst thing that can happen for somebody in the military or military spouse is their first day. Somebody says, okay, well, your computer's not ready, your desk isn't ready, sit over here and, you know, just read a book. That's the worst candidate experience as their first day because they want to contribute. And most people do, not just veterans or military spouses, but everybody wants to contribute. They've got a new job, they're excited, you know, they're ready to hit the ground running. And if employers aren't invested in that strategy of how are we onboarding them, how are we getting them set up for success in their new job, they're going to fail.
Absolutely. Yeah, the onboarding is critical. And you mentioned COVID, and certainly this distributed workforce is creating some additional challenges that a lot of employers are having to think innovatively around, right? And so what are you seeing as some of the best practices that that's I think worthwhile socializing as it relates to distributed workforce?
I think that a lot of employers are going to flexible arrangements for work hours. I think that's great. Remote work, certainly. Obviously, for military spouses who get transferred a lot, remote work is absolutely ideal and necessary. Think about, when you bring on a military spouse and they're gonna do a great job for you, and then 2 years they've got to move because the country is asking them to go somewhere else.
Good point.
You're losing that talent that you've already invested 2 years in. Why do that? So why, again, in that talent strategy, it's about how do we retain the talent we have. So I think employers are definitely looking at ways to be more flexible, ways to offer more benefits to help, especially females in the workforce. I mean, we're typically the ones who take care of daycare. We're typically the ones that have to be responsible for the children. I just read an article this morning that talked about, the kind of the bias of not being in the office. So most white males are working in the office, while people of color and females are staying home and working remote. And how does my manager treat me when they don't see me every day and when I'm not in their face every day? So I think employers have to look at that, and they are. The right ones are, and which is what makes the Great Resignation, again, more about choice, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm going to look for, I now have a taste of the fact that they're out there. I can now choose an employer who gives me that flexibility, who values my talent, who will understand I need to pick up my children at 3:30 from school. And I'm still going to get 100% of my work done, even if I only work 6 hours at the office, So I definitely think there's a huge shift, which I'm excited to see, because it's a long time coming, and it will be much more inclusive and intentional. I keep using those words just because it has to be.
Well, they're two of my favorite words, and so keep using them as often as you like. So yes, another reframe, you talked about the Great Resignation is more about choice and reevaluating, right? And I do think that's important for us to amplify. So as you were speaking a moment ago, Robyn, you were describing that there were times that you would apply to a job and you would intentionally omit your veteran status. I placed into the chat, that makes me sad. When I heard that, it gave me pause and it made me sad. And so a direct question that came to me from our audience that I want to present to you is, what can we do to help veterans feel more comfortable about disclosing their veteran status? Do you still recommend that people don't share their status? What advice would you give?
No, I absolutely recommend that, and military spouses as well, be proud of that. Less than 1% of the population wears the uniform or is a military spouse. Be proud of that. Put it on your resume. My resume now has, not that I use it very often, but it has that I served in the U.S. Navy and the years that I served. So I think we tell people, be proud of your service. And if you don't go to an employer who values that, they're not the right employer for you. Move on. Find the employers who have a veteran and military page on their website. But it's more than just putting up a little, logo that says, hey, we're veteran friendly or we're military friendly. It has to go beyond that. But that's one thing that employers can do. Is it's very simple to put, a page on their careers section for military, information here. Talk about how they have a military resource group or just things like that they can do. But it goes beyond that, because if I now apply, so you just tell me to go and apply for a job on your website and I get filtered out,
right?
That's not being intentional. That's not being ready for me, right? So you have to then, you can't just put kind of the smoke and mirrors up, if you will, right?
Yeah.
You have to really push through and be more focused on the rest of how you're including military, how you're bringing them on board, how you're valuing their service. And again, it's not hard to do. There's so many simple things that employers can do. It just takes a little bit of effort, but I believe the ROI is there.
Yeah, we can't make it just rhetoric. We have to make sure that there's some rigor behind it, right? So I love how you amplify. Don't just say we're military friendly. What does that mean? How are you embodying that message with action within your organization? So I so appreciate that. I'm also very appreciative of you bringing to the conversation military spouses and how they should also lean into sharing that they are a military spouse. I've never thought about that. I am a former military spouse. My husband is prior Air Force. And I remember when we were following his military career, I thought, oh my goodness, I'm going to need to have something to fall back on, because once I move to another location, that area may not be the market for my career, right? And so I never thought about that as also being something that needed to be in the consideration set. So I appreciate you bringing that to the conversation. So another question that's come from our audience: are there any initiatives for the year on the government level that will make the workforce more accessible to veterans? Very great question. Thank you.
Is a great question. So yes, there are a lot of initiatives. The Department of Labor has several initiatives out there. We're part of a pilot with the DoD, Veterans Ascend is. So there's a lot of initiatives. There's a lot of programs on the federal level that are trying to help military spouses in their licensing. So if you think about you as a teacher, you're living in Mississippi as a teacher and you move to Alabama, the licensing to be a teacher in the next state doesn't carry over. So there's things like that they're helping military spouses be able to take their experience and have that tenure, if you will, to another state or another location. So there are hundreds of programs out there. I think the states also have several training opportunities. So if you hire a veteran, there's training money in each state that you can get to train them on certain aspects of their job. So great programs like that. Here in South Carolina, there's a lot of great programs like that in the county, Spartanburg County and Greenville County. So I think you need to look at your states and see what you can get, and tax credits as well, trying to provide an employer an incentive to hire military. So that's out there. So there are ways. I don't think we do enough, quite honestly. But I say that, kind of, and then I think, well, the military is a business. And how many other businesses do you know that when you say I'm leaving, they help you get into the next opportunity? Now, the big difference, obviously, is we raised our right hand to protect and serve this country with all the sacrifices that entails, and there should be some consideration for that. But I think that there's a lot of programs out there. Neela and I, certainly, if you connect with us on LinkedIn, we can help you get to those resources and be connected. So.
No, that's great. And we did provide your website into the chat. We may drop that in it again so that it'll be right at the really accessible to everyone here. But yes, and this audience is all over, but you did mention South Carolina. So definitely, if you're someone that's based in South Carolina, Robyn can be a great resource for you. And I'm sure that you will take advantage of that. So I just want to take a moment to share the stage. If there's someone in our audience today that would like to ask a question of Robyn, and unmute yourself, or perhaps you have a comment or another resource that you think is relevant to this topic that you want to socialize with this broader VodCast community, I want to give you a moment to do so right now. Do we have any takers? Just feel free to unmute yourself and share. Linroy, I see your hand up. Go for it.
Thank you. Thank you for coming today. Great session. I'm curious, as a fellow veteran, what are some of maybe the top 2 skill sets that you've kind of drawn from your military experience that you can drop some nuggets for the veterans that are here? Thank you.
Thank you. So probably I'll say persistence is a skill I learned in the military, right? Especially being a female, just really not letting go of the fight. And also the leadership. The military puts young people in leadership roles right from the start. And they're put in those positions because they can handle it, but they're getting the training also. But yes, persistence and leadership, and really again, I have to go back to be proud of your military service, be proud of serving as a military spouse. Those are not easy jobs. Military spouses are some of the most resilient, resourceful, productive individuals that you will ever find, without getting all the training that the military gives the service member, right? They're getting it done on their own. So I would say, again, persistence, leadership, and resiliency, and just go get it done.
That's great. Thank you for your question, Lynn-Boy. And while you have the floor, I do want to give you an opportunity to speak to the upcoming Conscious Culture Roundtable opportunity that you shared in the chat. Would you like to just take a brief 30 seconds to share that with this community? We love resources.
Absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity. I actually was invited after doing a DE&I talk to a group of entrepreneurs and job seekers a few weeks ago, actually about a month and a half ago. And I was approached by this person. Her name is Melanie Allninger. And she basically was like, can we talk and meet? And we talked, spoke, and she spoke about women in leadership and what's going on in the organizational culture, and we just had a great time. And she's like, "Can I bring you on my podcast, video, etc.?" I said, "Absolutely." So we have about 45 or so people that have registered already. The details are when you click on the roundtable there. Please check it out and share the wealth. Thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it, Dr. Ryan.
Of course, absolutely. We love sharing with this community. And so thank you, Lynn-Boy. Any other questions, reflections? What's resonating with you, or maybe some contributions to the conversation? Anyone else would like to unmute yourself and share?
I do. I'm kind of stuck, Robyn, on what you said about, not disclosing that you were a veteran, and how things have shifted now to where you're encouraging people to disclose that they're a veteran. What has changed from then, from when you used to feel like you couldn't come out and share that you were a veteran? What's changed from then to now? And it seems like, from what you said, it seems like veterans still have some form of discrimination, because you said it's not just about things being put on the website. So could you just enlighten me a little more about this?
Absolutely. So I honestly believe that 9/11 changed a lot for the military. It brought a lot more awareness to what veterans, first responders do, and the sacrifices that they make, and what they're coming back, back into country, and what they've been experiencing. They've had a lot of organizations bringing focus on that. I also think that we've evolved, not 100%, but more than when I went in the Navy in 1979. Again, there were several occupations I was not allowed to do simply because I was a female. But that's changed. So, females can now do, I want to say, probably 100% of the jobs. We have Navy SEALs, so as females, so that's changed. So as a female, there were probably a lot more perceptions around why I was in the military, and that therefore I didn't disclose that. So that's changed. I also think that, right now there's more awareness to the skills that our military bring. And part of that is the DoD driving the skills that they're giving the military, and that awareness of those skills. 1% of the population is serving. That's a pretty lean military defending our country. And they're not only in conflict or combat situations. They're out in the world doing goodwill missions. They're out in the world doing natural disaster recovery missions. They're out in the world, providing support for countries who need to dig wells and learn to get their own water. So our military is doing a lot more and I think more people are aware of those kind of missions, thankfully. So I think that it's changed a lot, and I encourage now, obviously with Veterans Ascend, and my whole mission in life is to get veterans, military spouses to careers and to those interviews. I have to encourage them to be part of that military community again and be proud of that. So did I completely answer your question? I feel like I left something out.
You're on mute.
You're on mute.
Sorry. Yes, you did. I had no idea about 9/11, so thank you for sharing that. It's sad that it took a tragedy to make people realize the worth of veterans. But you didn't quite touch on, well, I guess you did. Why the website part, where you said that still people are screening on websites? It's not just about a statement on your website. Could you go more into detail about that?
So you can put if you put a page on your website that says, hey, we want military to apply, but then you're putting them through the applicant tracking process, and they apply through the applicant tracking process, then get filtered out because their previous employer doesn't match, their previous title doesn't match. So employers have to take the next step and make sure they're not filtering out. How many military are making it through your applicant tracking system? How many veterans are you interviewing for the jobs? How many are you bringing in the door? So it's more, that's the piece that you can't just stop at putting up a label to say, hey, we hire veterans. Do you really? So how many are you bringing in? How many military spouses are you bringing in? How many are getting through your process filters? So that's what I think employers need to become veteran and military ready. They're doing more than just saying we hire military. They're making sure their process, their HR teams have the tools and time that they need to really look at a resume, learn how to talk about military experience. And then again, it goes beyond that. And what's the onboarding experience like for that military person? Because while the military is we talk to each other. We're very well connected. So we're going to talk about, this company said they're very veteran friendly. They wanted to hire me. I got through the interview process. My first day, was horrible. I couldn't get along with my supervisor. I didn't have a battle buddy kind of thing. So again, it goes back to that investment in the talent strategy. It's an intentional step by step by step. And when you think about it, these techniques can apply to any candidate you bring in the door, right? Don't just say you want to hire a person. What do you do beyond that? How do you get the right talent through your filters, through your process? How do you onboard them? How do you train them? How do you retain them? So it's an entire strategy that goes, a whole package that goes together.
Thank you, Rachel, for your question. And by the way, you all, that is our colleague at NWC, Rachel Mayorazzi. She serves as our Senior Director of Client Success. So we appreciate your support today. We are getting to the top of the hour, but I do have one more question, and then I'm going to let you close us out with any kind of parting remarks that you feel like would be very useful and valuable to share with this audience. But what are some of the misconceptions around PTSD and individuals with disabilities? And how are employers allowing bias to interfere with their abilities to hire individuals identifying in these groups?
Yeah, great question. I think there's a lot of just misunderstandings about disabilities, and that's really where it starts. Again, going back to giving your HR teams time and the tools and the training to understand how they could be doing subconscious or unconscious bias, right? How they could address it in an interview better. We're all human beings. We don't want to look incompetent. We don't want to look uneducated. So we have things we bring to the table that are just who we are. But I think employers need to be more intentional about the training and the process that they put their HR teams through and their talent acquisition teams through. PTSD for our veterans, I always tell people, the military does a great job at helping our service members if they are identifying that they have PTS or they've been through a situation that gave them that. They're getting help. Mm-hmm. It's the civilian who's been through a traumatic situation who is not getting help. Yeah, that's somebody that you really need to be worried about. Not really our veterans, right? Yeah. Not to say that they don't have problems, but same thing with disabilities. There's a lot of misperceptions around the cost associated with bringing someone on with a disability, when in fact, the majority of any accommodations are less than $500. But the person that you hire is going to be so dedicated and appreciative of having that opportunity to work, to contribute. So again, it goes back to education, training, time, to make these right decisions within the hiring process.
Yeah, and let's not forget the large percentage of people in the workforce with invisible disabilities, right?
Yes.
That we know nothing about. So Robyn, we're out of time, but let me just say that you have dropped so many great nuggets today. You've given us a lot to think about, and we're just really grateful that you were willing to share time with us today. I hope that everyone in this community will find an opportunity to learn more about Veterans Ascend. And I want to give you the final few seconds just to close this out in whatever way that you would like to share.
Again, thank you all for being here. Obviously, by being here, you're showing your intention to be inclusive and mindful. So I appreciate that. Anything that we can do at Veterans Ascend to help your organizations or help you, please let us know. We're all about partnerships. We're all about helping make those connections so that we can all be intentionally inclusive. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Happy Friday, everyone. Enjoy your weekend. We'll see you back here next week, hopefully, for the Intentional Conversations podcast. Enjoy your weekend.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Bye.